Have you ever thought about what happens to all the old satellites and rockets that are just floating around in space? Well, they don't just disappear, they end up breaking apart and they scatter into thousands of pieces, but they just keep orbiting Earth, and this is what we call space junk. It does sound harmless, but these tiny pieces are moving at speeds of over 17,000 miles per hour, and at that speed, even something the size of a small screw can cause massive damage to anything it hits. Now, this brings us to the International Space Station, or the ISS. Just recently, a piece of debris from an old satellite, one that broke up back in 2015, it came dangerously close to the station. It came about 2.5 miles within the ISS. On Earth, that sounds pretty far, but in space, when objects are moving at almost 300 miles per minute, 2.5 miles is practically nothing. And if they were on a collision course, then it would be over in the blink of an eye. So how did the ISS handle this? Well, it dodged out of the way. There's space agencies like NASA who are constantly tracking these debris that are floating around in orbit, and when something does get close, they take some action. The ISS performed what's called a debris avoidance maneuver. Essentially, they fired the station's thrusters for a little bit to slightly move it out of the way. The thing is, the ISS already has to boost itself up here and there because Earth's gravity is slowly pulling it down. So these maneuvers are happening already, but they serve two purposes. Number one, they dodge debris, and number two, they help the station stay in its proper orbit. What's even more surprising is how often this happens. In the 23 years that the ISS has been in orbit, it's had to dodge debris 37 times. This might not sound like much, but it also shows just how much junk there is up there and how carefully we have to monitor it. This debris situation also raises a bigger question, which is, why do we have so much junk in space in the first place? Well, every time a satellite dies, or a rocket is launched, or two objects collide, there are going to be pieces that are left behind. These fragments stay in orbit for years, sometimes even decades, because there's just no natural way to clean them up. And cleaning just isn't easy. Some satellites end up running out of fuel, so they can't be guided back into Earth's atmosphere to eventually burn up. Others are too small, or they're way too spread out to collect. Right now, scientists are working on solutions, but none of it's ready yet. So here's the bottom line. Space might be big, but it is starting to get crowded. The more debris we leave behind, the harder it becomes to safely launch new satellites or to send people into space. And if we don't find a way to clean it up, we could run into some real problems in the future. For now though, the ISS is continuing to stay safe, dodging debris whenever it needs to, and it's a reminder of how important it is to keep space clean, because even in a place as vast as outer space, there's only so much room.